Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here and bringing your team along as well. Just if you could indulge me for a few minutes, just wanted to kind of get something off my chest and with some follow-up questions. You know, I have a large affinity for history, Native American history being in particular, and you know, to consider your two tribes and what your ancestors have gone through. You know, considering the early 17th century battling with the smallpox outbreak, if people aren't familiar with history, when the foreign settlers came in, you know, then moving on to 1983 when President Reagan signed the Connecticut Lands Agreement, Native American Lands Agreement. You know, unfortunately, if you poll residents today of Connecticut or the New England states, and you ask them, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the Mashantucket Pequots or the Mohegans or the Scatticokes even, who are currently seeking recognition? I would be fair to say 99% of them would say casino and money making. And I have a personal issue with that. You know, I fully support all that your tribes have done over the last 3 decades, the revenues that you've brought to the state, all by extension who's benefited from that. But when you consider in the last 15 years how your combined revenues have decreased from a little over $3 billion to the mid $1.5 billion, how your workforce has decreased in upwards of 30 to 40%, those numbers are staggering to me. And I understand that, you know, this is a fast-paced world. You need to be competitive. And I understand that what your aspirations are to build this casino in the East Windsor area, you want to compete. And certainly as leaders of this state and the residents do, we certainly want to compete. But when you're proposing to build on a site that's 15 miles from Springfield, and you're proposing a casino that you want to compete with a $1 billion facility that MGM is in the process of building, and you know, you're looking at the process, and you want to be good neighbors, you want to be good advocates for where you're about to move into. And I know the issue of the referendum was brought up. I won't belabor that. But looking at the site in particular, its vicinity to DCF offices, DSS offices, looking at where the volatility would be of who your customers would be. And I'm not an economic developer by trade. I don't claim to be that. But when you're looking at the bigger picture, and for the record, I represent the northwest corner of the 64th district. I have zero interest in where East Windsor is in particular, but I believe as a state legislator, I'd be doing a disservice to all the residents of Connecticut if I didn't voice my concern with, you know, how this package was put together. And from an economic development standpoint, how this location was ultimately decided upon. When you have the city of Hartford struggling, you have the XL Center struggling. You know, we lost our Hartford Whalers. We've been trying to attract some type of professional sports team back to this area. And when you put all those variables together and you still end up with East Windsor as your location right off of 91, a mere 15 miles from a $1 billion facility, a destination facility, a facility that has much more to offer than what you gentlemen are proposing. And I've been to both your facilities. It's an amazing place to be. Those are true destination facilities. But I think if we're going to compete in the market that you're looking to compete in, I don't know if this is subpar or if it's going to be the standard. And I find it a little unfortunate that, you know, our local tribes are immediately followed up with the word casino or now commercial expansion. And without giving other companies in the area, in New England or even in Connecticut, a chance to come to the table and present a viable bid, something that may far surpass what you guys have proposed, I think we're doing a disservice to existing companies. And we want to be fair, we want to be open, we want to be transparent. And I commend you both. You have been fair and transparent. But I think once your tribes step off tribal land and you're now proposing commercial entities, to be fair neighbors, and like you've said, you've been here for thousands of years, and we respect that. As a lover of historian and Native American history, I appreciate that. But if you want to be fair and you want to be transparent, then I think you should be willing to let this process be open and let all entities come to the table. And if so, if you guys, you know, as Representative Herrero said, if you have the best proposal, the best package, the best aspiration, then so be it. You know, God bless it. But I think right now, and I certainly don't speak on behalf of this committee or a number of my colleagues, but I know some of them do share the same sentiments or concerns I do, as how closed this process is from the outside looking in. So I just wanted to share that with you, if you have anything to follow up on.
Yes, yeah, a little bit. But first and foremost, I mean, you gave me chills how you were talking about history, and I certainly appreciate and respect the level of respect that you have for our culture and what we've done for the state of Connecticut, and quite frankly, what the state of Connecticut's done to us over the last 400 years. And so the fact that you can go back 378 years to the Pequot Massacre that was led by, and it's ironic of sitting with Connecticut and the Mohegans, right? In a battle that was set to massacre our people, and followed by the Treaty of Hartford, which proclaimed us no longer existence and forbid our language. The fact that we're all here today as friends and partners is incredible. And you know, and I've pointed this out, and many of us in this room don't know our own history or recognize the remnants around us. But on the state capitol building, there's a depiction of an Indian fort being burned. That's mystic. And on the other end of the building is a bust of Colonel Mason. And so we understand the challenges and the history that we faced here. And again, I have a tremendous respect that you appreciate that, and welcome you anytime to come visit our museum, largest Native American museum in the world. You may have been there. Tremendous history, not only of ours, but Mohegan and the state of Connecticut. You also pointed from a historical perspective a very important point in what's led us to this legislation that we're pursuing. You know, our revenues have declined. Our employee base have declined substantially, solely due to the expansion of competition.
And the lack of this conversation at those other times in our history.
Right. So when Rhode Island opened up and expanded gaming, ironically, they built a slot facility similar to what we're proposing. We're proposing something, you know, much more high end than that. They built a slot facility that we're concerned about that we even thought wasn't going to compete with our $3 billion that we've invested here in the state. We had no idea the magnitude of the impact that they would have on the Connecticut gaming market. They're now enjoying a slot market of over $400 million. They expanded to table games. Those dollars from table games went almost dollar for dollar from Connecticut to Rhode Island. So we have that history, again, reflecting on the historical context. So we know what's going to happen with Springfield and with MGM and opening up in Springfield, and that's what's driven this entire process. And yes, the current process hasn't been open to third parties who are trying to take revenue and jobs from Connecticut. We understand that because we've been in this partnership together for all these years, for 25 plus years, and we've seen how beneficial it can be. So we're continuing under the guise of that partnership in protecting this state. Are there alternative processes? Absolutely. I mean, the committee's debating those. But the reality is we know what's going to happen a year and a half from now. We have for certainty know that we're going to lose several thousand jobs and 100 millions of revenue and almost 70 to 80 million in slot revenue for the state, slot tax for the state. That's for certain. So I appreciate the desires and the concerns around a process. Look, we run RFP processes in our enterprises. I mean, but we also, as governments, do make singular decisions based on what's in the best interest of our tribal governments, as the state of Connecticut does for your government.
Again, let me start with the historical reference point. Look at me. I look like my Irish dad. I don't look like my mother, who is a revered tribal nonner. The Indian side of my family, 13 generations from Uncas, sitting right here in front of you. I get it. I understand the importance of history. And so when I travel around Indian country and I hear people say, oh, you're from the Mohegan Sun tribe, it drives me bananas. That's not who we are. We are not the casino. We are a tribe. If you look at the history, and I know this history because I Googled it. I Googled this history like Representative Skolchik described earlier. The history of the border wars between the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the Connecticut Colony, the secession of Springfield from the Connecticut Colony to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, is all about this same conversation we're having right now. Resources that flow up and down the Connecticut River, Algonquin word, Tidal River, our word. Those resources flowing north to Springfield is why Massachusetts Bay Colony got greedy, took Springfield under its wing, and for years and months after that, Connecticut couldn't get grain to grow, tried to get grain from Springfield, but Springfield wouldn't sell grain to the Hartford region. I mean, this is just an extension of all kinds of history, and it's all about simple business competition. But it's girded by a long-standing, centuries-long relationship. That's why we're here. That's why we are here before you, as the chairman said in his comments earlier about why we're having this conversation and why we're having it with long-standing partners with our state. There's nothing surreptitious or hidden or anything about this. And in fact, this legislation that's being proposed is about landing now a casino in East Windsor. But nowhere does it deny the possibility for any other gaming company to come in behind this and to suggest that they want to follow the lead of this other bill that's been proposed. They are separate and apart from each other. As you described your reasons why you couldn't understand that we might do this in East Windsor, you almost created the exact rubric of why we would do this in East Windsor. It's right off I-91. It's only 15 miles from Springfield. And it can compete with what is being called a billion-dollar facility, but if you get down inside those numbers and look at the square feet of gaming space, I said it earlier, 100,000 square feet of gaming space for our facility, 120,000 for MGM. And when you get right down to it, the same capacity for gaming is being created. The same first-class production will be the case. And then probably most important and not yet discussed in this whole conversation today, we're not shooting for the destination customer. That's what we do at our flagship properties. And so what we're building, we don't want to build something that's going to compete with our flagship property. We want to build something that's going to compete on the gaming side of things, like Chairman Butler described occurred in Rhode Island, and we know we can do it successfully.
Thank you, gentlemen, both. I truly appreciate the dialogue and the exchange. I think we're all gaining a bunch of much more insight and information as to this really serious subject, and hopefully for the betterment of the state as a whole. And I again, thank you for your time, and thank you for your team for attending. Thank you, Mr. Chair.